Welcome everybody to Center Stage. I'm your host Rajiv, and today I'm honored to have Denis Sison, Head of Marketing Excellence and GMS Operations from Johnson & Johnson.
Hi,
Denis,
everybody.
welcome to the show. How you doing? Yeah. And Denis, where are you dialing in from today?
I'm dialing in from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm, home right before July 4th, and so glad to be here this morning.
Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Denis, you've been at Johnson & Johnson for 4 years. You've had an amazing career. You have an MBA from Harvard Business School. You've been at Hershey. You've been at Coca-Cola. Again, you've been at now Johnson & Johnson for 4 years. And one of the things you talk about is sort of how the role of the marketer has changed. It's really, you talk about a modern marketer, and you talk about the 4S's, which consists of scientists, socializers, strategists, and storytellers, which I love.
That's right.
So let's talk about that. Tell the audience a little bit about your perspective on the marketer and why these 4S's are important.
Sure. I think the practice of marketing has really evolved dramatically over the last 10 years or so. And one of my simplest and favorite ways of understanding the evolution of marketing was really offered by a very smart guy, Rishad Tabakwala, right? Who's the chief strategist of Publicis. And when he spoke at one of our conferences at J&J, described that there were really three phases of connectivity that have occurred over the last few years. Think about 1997 when the web was really introduced as a key marketing channel, that connected our consumers with information that they needed with our brands. Think Web 2.0, right? And the growth of Google, etc., in 1997. And then you think about 10 years after that, in 2007, you really had the introduction of the smartphone and Facebook, which introduced mobile and social.
Right.
And today, we're now faced with a third age of connectivity with the explosion of data, information, and the Internet of Things. So we're about to enter a third part. Now, over those past 20 years, the way we as marketers have been practicing and to drive growth of our brands and our businesses have evolved over time. Aside from the traditional brand building models that was very highly reliant on television, we then began to understand, you had to build capabilities and skills that are related to connecting through the internet. And later understanding the implications of mobile as well as social, as part of your brand building efforts. And so over this period of time, I think as a marketer, we began to realize that the skill sets that one has to have to be able to be very good at their job and importantly grow their business has also evolved. And so, as you pointed out, we all talk about the 4S's, where modern marketers have to be better scientists. And this is in recognition of the fact that with the explosion of information and data, we almost have to be, have an understanding and appreciation for how the sources of information and data is actually derived, and understand them to be able to get the necessary insights possible to drive our brands. We also talked about strategists, because with all of this information, you still have to make a choice, right? On how to go about making real-time decisions that will impact the outcome of your business. The storyteller is all about this recognition that consumers have changed their consumer habits as well as the channels. It's much more fragmented now in regards to how we have to build awareness and consideration for our brands, and therefore our ability to tie in, our brand's meaning and our purpose all throughout becomes critically important. When you're thinking about multiple screens and multiple content formats and different types of information that the consumer may be looking for as part of their journey. And certainly as a socializer, this all recognizes that we don't anymore own 100%, or control our brands, that we're becoming very highly dependent on the public at large, and our users to be able to create meaning and relevance for our brands in their own lives as well. So those are really the 4S's. It's simply a recognition and evolution of the requirements of becoming a modern marketer. Now, not to say that the old skill sets that we used to, or we were trained on 20 years ago or so, around pricing and packaging and and how you create brand awareness are not important. They still are. I think the principles haven't changed. It's the how you begin to build that's necessary. And I'd like to say, Rajiv, importantly, we've had a couple of studies over the last couple of years where it confirms the fact that brands and businesses that grow faster than their competitors have to have not just traditional skill areas, but also these modern marketing skill areas. And so you have to have both of these, more traditional and more modern skill sets to ultimately apply this to a business that's constantly evolving and changing for real success. And there are studies out there that have proven this out.
Got it. That's great. So best of the old and traditional combined with the new sort of modern way of thinking about marketing.
Right. And the complete marketer has to be able to do everything, right? That's where you have to be agile, flexible, and knowledgeable, everything from, marketing technology, to analytics, to channel pricing, to portfolio management, to brand building and communications, etc. It's a lot broader skill set of skill areas that need to be proficient in to be able to really be a great marketer today. And it's hard, right?
Let's talk about that for a second. So what sort of advice would you give budding marketers who are really excited about becoming head of marketing or CMOs? How do you sort of level up your skills to make sure you understand this breadth of different functions that's required to be an effective marketer in today's world?
Sure. Many people talk about career ladders these days as being more like jungle gyms, right? And as a result of that, we just have to recognize the fact that there's no linear career path anymore in the industry. And you almost have to have call it a true north, of what you're after, where you want to be able to go in your career, because not everybody necessarily wants to be a CMO, right? Some, with very different roles that different companies offer and have different expectations around different roles. You have to be able to find ultimately what the joy in what you do and what you're actually willing to sacrifice a lot of your time and effort in terms of your career.
Yeah.
And so when you're young, I have a daughter, in fact, who's in college, and she's looking into the space as well. And I'll give you the same advice I give her, which is, understand the different industries, what they expect from marketing, because different industries have different expectations of what marketing does. And at the same time, try to get as much experience as you can, while you're young, across different industries and different roles, so that you have an appreciation for how marketing is actually applied to the business. And I think that's a very important thing that people forget, is the value of your marketing career is only as good as how it impacts your business and how it actually grows your business. And therefore, everything that you do, should be towards your growth in terms of your experience and understanding the connectivity between the marketing principles and the growth factors that your business offers as well.
Great advice. Great advice, Dennis. Thank you. Let's go back to the modern marketing skills and what you did with that. You actually, trained leadership and performance models across different parts of the marketing organization at J&J, using these modern marketing skills. Talk a little bit about how you did that in terms of leadership and performance models.
Yeah, so I truly believe that to elevate the skill sets of marketers, you have to be able to apply it to the business, right? There's a thing called the adult learning model, where 70% of your development really is on the job, right? As you're practicing what you do, and there's about 20% of it is the kind of coaching that you provide or that you get from somebody who is almost like a mentor, right? For a particular area or your career. And then there's 10%, which is just the training itself, right? To the seminars that you go to, things that you do online, etc. So when you think about that holistically as a construct, leadership, for performance, as I kind of think about it, is that you have to be able to lead the building of your brand through the performance and growth of your actual business.
Hmm.
And to do that, you have to be able to apply the things that you learn in a way that can truly impact the growth of your brand or your business.
Hmm.
And so when we developed the four S's, there were many things that we have done. We changed the curriculum, right? In terms of the content. So we lined it up against more modern topics, such as data strategy, understanding social and mobile, etc. But certainly, made sure that it was developed by people who were in the company experts, who were using the kind of tool sets that we were endorsing and the kind of data sets that we had available, so that the learners themselves can apply what they learn, into the job itself. It's not necessarily just off the shelf, generic training. So it's about an applied approach to the content and the topics that we work on with everybody in the company who is responsible for that particular subject area. So we
Just
I'm
a
sorry.
quick question. Are you referencing to the modern marketing playbook that you authored? Is this the curriculum or is this something different?
No, this is the curriculum that we built out in support of the four S's, right?
Okay. Okay.
So, the modern marketing playbook, though, and I think we've shared this, publicly as well, was an understanding that with all of the disruption that's happening in the marketing environment today,
Mhm.
you have to have some sort of a direction or vision to tell people here's kind of where we're going, as
Mhm.
it applies itself, as it applies itself to the company, right? And so what we said is that we would have to redefine the ABCs and Ds of modern marketing, right?
Mhm.
And so we said, with our CMO, uh, that the new ABCs were: one is you always have to be a brand, or our business always has to have a presence in the marketplace.
Mhm.
You're always present. B is all about brand experiences,
Mhm.
recognizing that you deliver products and services that go beyond just the actual product, right? That you're selling in a package. The C is all about recognizing that it's all about connected commerce. That everything that we do ultimately will lead to a sale, whether it be in brick and mortar or in e-commerce or in other DTC channels that are important. It's got to lead to some conversion in commerce.
Yep.
And everything is really driven by D, which is the data, right? And the analytics that power all of your ABCs and your Ds,
Got
right?
it. So speaking of brand experience, can you describe an example where you created a brand experience that was delightful and just beyond the product itself?
Sure, absolutely. I think over just last January during the during CES, there's a lot
Mhm.
of talk about Neutrogena 360.
Okay.
And it is a tool, right? A product that allows consumers who use it, as an attachment to their smartphone, to be able to analyze their skin types.
Hmm.
And a regimen is then recommended, based on the data that is actually constructed, from that scan and that analysis. But that's an example of living into a brand, where the possibilities, see what's possible, right? Is its tagline, as an important, where you begin to understand that being smarter about things is also where beauty is about, right? So it's smarts plus beauty.
Yeah.
So as a foundation for that, it gives users and consumers another way of enhancing their relationship with the brand,
Hmm.
beyond the actual product itself. And I think that's a demonstration of how modern brands need to be built, where there's a purpose, there is a set of experiences beyond just the actual product of use,
Hmm.
which is table stakes these days, but also additional value and information and services that can enhance the meaning of the brand,
Yeah.
for your users.
Great. Great. Great example. Love that. You also have led the development and deployment of the new content and communication process across more than 2,000 marketing, commercial, and agency personnel. Can you tell us a little bit about what that entailed and what you did there?
Yeah, I mean, this was actually a couple of years back, right?
Mhm.
And J&J, as it was starting off its global marketing approach, right, it needed a way of being able to have a consistent way of building our brands. More importantly, with our not just internally but also externally with our agency partners. Having agencies responsible all around the world for the creation of communications, etc. And so that integrated marketing communications approach was then defined at the center using again subject matter experts understanding what would work for our culture and our operation, and as every deployment goes, that was trained across more than 2,000 people all around the world, so that everybody would have an appreciation of how to work together, and the kind of language and the kind of information flows and the decisions that needed to get made in each part of that step, right? It's very, and it's tailored to what works for the company.
Got it. Great, great. Let's talk about your personal journey and your career. Again, you've had quite a journey to get to where you are. You were at Coca-Cola for several years. You were at Hershey's for several years. Again, you got your MBA from Harvard. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Were you always passionate about marketing? Did you know that's where you wanted to go? And what were some of the highlights of your journey along the way?
Wow, you have the whole afternoon.
Yeah, I do.
So I did actually, I did actually start my career at Procter and Gamble, right?
Procter and Gamble,
Back
okay.
in the Philippines, right before getting my MBA, and then go back to P&G, back in the Philippines. But that's where, had an opportunity to move to the Coca-Cola company, which is one of the largest markets worldwide for Coca-Cola. And to your point, that was an important, I think, juncture in terms of my personal assessment, where I said, do you ask myself whether I wanted to be the best marketer that I can be, right, or and also be or also be a strong P&G person, right, which I was on the way to as well. And that's kind of where I decided that I wanted to really become the best marketer that I can be. And so I had the opportunity to work for one of the biggest brands and companies worldwide in CPG, and you mentioned a few of them with Coca-Cola. I was the head of Sprite worldwide, turning around that business a couple of years back. And also having the opportunity to work for the very best chocolate brands in the world. When I was with the Hershey company, and in technology, when I joined BlackBerry, it was the #1 smartphone brand that was available there as well, right? So J&J is no different. I mean, great market leaders in so many different categories, and so I take great pride in being affiliated with some of the world's strongest brands. Because these are the brands that really, I believe, drive value to many of the organizations.
So what is it like working for such large, well-known global brands? I mean, what are some of the challenges that you faced working with such brands? I mean, everybody knows Hershey's, everybody knows Coca-Cola, everybody knew BlackBerry, maybe not the millennials so much anymore, because it's not as relevant. So what were some of the, I mean, you talked about Sprite and you turned it around. I'd love to hear an example of what that was like.
It was a phenomenal experience. I mean, this was, way back, maybe 15 years ago. And the brand was reeling from some difficulty in terms of the absence of investment behind it, right? Because there was some deprioritization. And so when you're working with global brands such as that, it's fascinating because you learn to very quickly try to distill and understand from all the complexity, right? Of pack sizes and country mixes and cultures and histories of the brand and levels of investment, etc. You begin to try and understand, what are the fundamental and common things that drive the outcome and the results of your brand and your business. And so I had the opportunity to travel to more than 25, almost 30 countries during the time that I was with Coca-Cola. And you begin to realize that there's a lot more commonality around the world when it comes to brands and consumption, right, and beverages, that you can always leverage and build consistency with, right, finding what's more common. to drive a common message and a set of assets that people will feel confident about, so that they can, in fact, invest behind the business. So, as you may or may not know, our roles, we don't necessarily are responsible for investing behind the media directly, right?
Hmm.
Behind the brands, right? We have local bottlers or country markets making those kind of decisions, and so you have to find very quickly, what would be the best way of being able to help enable growth for any organization, depending on their culture and operating structure. And that's kind of what I did when I was there. I worked with market champions who really believed in the cause and could see that there was potential for the brand, and try to understand the kind of assets and the kind of communication and the right messaging that
Hmm.
they would need to invest behind their brand, and give them the right packaging, the right innovation. During my time, during that turnaround, aside from doing great advertising with campaigns like Freedom from Thirst and Obey Your Thirst and Thirst Never Wins.
I remember those. Yeah.
Right. We also, launched things like Sprite Remix in the US. We did Sprite Zero. We had Sprite Ice in Asia. So we had a lot of line extensions that were really fantastic opportunities to broaden the palette and give news to the markets for people to reconsider drinking Sprite. And that was just an amazing, amazing, successful campaign. So much so that Sprite Zero, and I want to say this, right, was actually out in the markets first before Coca-Cola Zero.
Okay.
Right? And in fact was expanded, and it was so successful that that's when they said, hey, the Zero thing's working for Sprite. Why don't we take it and just put it across all of the lines of Coca-Cola?
Wow.
And so, so that was the team that I was with and I was leading. I'm very proud of that part of Little History and Trivia.
Amazing. I'm a big fan of Coke Zero. Actually, that's what my go-to drink when I
Yeah,
have Coca-Cola.
so true.
Let's circle it back to the four S's, and I kind of want to double click on the scientist part of what you talked about earlier,
Sure.
and sort of market data and analytics, and why that's so important. We know as marketers in 2019 that data is really part of the tool set that you really need to look at and analyze in order to make informed decisions. But can you talk about again your perspective from data and analytics, and how do you sort of navigate the mountain of data that we all have access to in order to find the right insights to make informed decisions as a marketer?
Right. So, as I said, it's these four S's, right? And I think of the four, being the scientist and the strategist are almost commingled together, right?
Mhm.
Because the thing that I always try to communicate, with this area, around analytics and analysis, is the fact that it always really starts with your definition of the business problem and being able to ask the right questions,
Okay.
right? So if you're able to articulate the kind of challenge and issue that you're faced with in a way that your partners, right, who are your data scientists and your analytics, scientists, uh, they will be in a better position to do the actual modeling, right, and actually do the kind of research that's necessary to be able to give you the right kind of answers, right?
Right.
And the way I've kind of generally, I guess, framed it in my mind is there is this difference between analysis and analytics, right?
Hmm.
Specifically in our world, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Where I think the analytics portion, which uses big data sets, typically involve building out more models for predicting what will happen in the future, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Therefore, in that sense, you're as a marketer, you have to be able to quickly make those connections between the kind of decisions that you need to make now that are
Hmm.
critical to the future, or versus being able to simply understand the cause and effects of the outcomes that you're facing with today. And those become very critical as you're having this discussion with your partners.
Got it. Okay, great. Dennis, I'm curious, what has been some of the most enjoyable parts of working at Johnson and Johnson for you?
Oh, it's a fantastic company that really allows each of the individuals to try new stuff, right?
Hmm.
To create and to be independent and to have the freedom to test and learn and go beyond their their current roles. And so I've really cherished my stay at J&J, because I've certainly learned so much about not just myself, but being able to, kind of like almost reinvent the way capabilities are built out in the industry. And that's given me a lot of energy, as well as opportunity, particularly with the ANA, right, where I've been very involved with in terms of the Talent Forward Alliance, which is also trying to help elevate the marketing capabilities of everyone in the industry, right? Because I think we all recognize that there is a need to be able to upskill and to redefine what marketing is so that it becomes a much more fruitful and meaningful and productive career for many of our colleagues in the future.
Great. Do you have any daily habits or rituals that keeps you energized or focused? Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely start my day with a lot of reflection and prayer. I'm not to say that, but I think it's important to keep grounded and understand exactly what you have to be able to prepare for that day, and at the same time, keeping your body, I think, also as healthy as possible, is an important thing. I try to do about 4 miles, 4 to 5 times a week, right?
Okay. Wow.
So try to get that into as well. So those are kind of like the two foundational things. But I do spend a lot of time also keeping myself as current with much of the trends that you have, because of the kind of disruption that you see in marketing all around.
Are there any trends that you've identified that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that. I think this emergence really of the modern marketer, I think is something that is ripe, right? I'm really excited about that because for the first time, I said, there's been all these changes in terms of our full ecosystem. You think about not just the thoughtware that we use to be able to build our brands because of the changes of how consumers perceive our brands and what they're expecting from brands. We talked a little bit about that in terms of purpose and experience, but more importantly, in terms of the supporting infrastructure, right? Our agency models, how media is actually bought, and also in guaranteed, right? In the old world, now you can see that many companies are transforming and building capabilities in-house to be able to do the work themselves. And then you've got measurement systems that are also evolving and changing, all towards this objective of ensuring that whatever we do as marketers, we can measure and connect with ROI for our business. I think there's been so much disruption, certainly the last 10 years, but I think we're now coming to a point where the marketers are going to become much more fluent and much more knowledgeable around the connectivity of what our brands are doing to ensure the growth of the business, in a way that is, you can be confident about, your investment behind marketing. It can be repeatable, and it can be something that you can certainly invest in. And I don't think we've, and that's because of the evolution of where, many parts of our ecosystem has gone over the last, 5 years in particular, particularly in the measurement space, and the data that is now available and our ability to be able to quickly synthesize that and connect that with our growth models themselves. So I think now is actually, there's no better time to be a marketer, to be honest, right? It's super exciting. I'm very excited, especially for young marketers and those that have current skills, that have a clear understanding of not just the traditional but also the more modern marketing skills, because it's the demand and for talent and the demand for marketers are just going to go through the roof over the next 3 to 5 years, and I'm very excited about that.
100% agree. That's really all the questions I have. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
No. I think it's great. As I said, I think it's a great time to be a marketer, but not just a modern marketer. I really hope that we all are able to find a way to be disruptive as well, right? So I think my goal over the next years will be not just to be known as a modern marketer, but to be a disruptive and modern marketer that can truly create disproportional value for the companies that we work with. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dennis. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time and dialing in today right before the 4th of July.
Right.
Denis Sison, Head of Marketing Excellence, GMS Operations at Johnson & Johnson. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Rajiv.
I'm Rajiv, everybody, your host at Center Stage. Thanks for watching. We wish you all a safe and prosperous 4th of July. We'll see you next time.